Why is China surveying the strait between the Philippines and Taiwan? And what is happening at Scarborough Shoal off the western coast of Luzon? This in the Luzon Strait.
The Chinese research vessel Tan Suo. This is Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Teresa Magbanwa.
The Philippines chased a Chinese research vessel away from Manila's exclusive economic zone of Ilocos Norte, where Tan Suo had been conducting surveys since May 1st. But the Philippine Coast Guard spokesman Tarriela said the Tan Suo wasn't just working alone. It was taped retrieving 2 other submersibles. Watch.
This just appears to be a small object, but this is actually the submersible manned research vessel of the Chinese, of this Chinese research vessel.
More of that later. And southwest of the Luzon Strait, you can see here a Chinese frigate closely tailing a Philippine Navy ship, which was conducting a patrol in its own exclusive economic zone near Scarborough Shoal. Why has China doubled its maritime militia and Coast Guard presence at Scarborough Shoal, according to maritime transparency advocate Sealight? And are the Luzon Strait surveys and Chinese activity at Scarborough Shoal linked? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Yin Khvat. Joining us today are Suo, National Chengchi University Department of Political Science Professor, and Renato Cruz de Castro, De La Salle University Department of International Studies Distinguished Professor. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. Let's go back to Tarriela's video to show the submersible which has been hauled out of the water, as you can see there, onto the deck of the Tan Suo. It's known as the Shanghai Yongshi, or Deep Sea Warrior, with a diving depth of more than 4,000 meters. Here now, a rigid hull boat is sent to retrieve a second yellow object, which Tarriela says is another submersible. Renato, let me start with you. So China appeared to be in a hurry to retrieve these submersibles before they could be, we presume, intercepted by the Filipinos. What do you think they were holding? What was so valuable?
Probably conducting scientific marine research, but for what purpose, of course, that is another matter. Chances are it's testing, looking into the depth of the waters, and of course also looking at the water pressure, and also looking at the underwater terrain, which are indications of China's effort basically to look at the area for submarine warfare.
What sort of scenarios are we looking at?
Well, just imagine you have a Taiwan contingency. You have American forces moving from their sites in Luzon, where of course they'll be operating just in case there's a decision from Washington to send American forces in case of, Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So Chinese submarine would ensure that China is capable of what you call sea denial, so that the U.S. surface competence transport ships, of course, would be attacked by the Chinese submarines operating not only from the northwestern part of Luzon, but also at the northeastern part. There's also another ship that was another Chinese survey ship, scientific ship, that was, of course, also chased away by the Philippine Coast Guard. So there were 2, actually, survey ships present, one in the western part, in the South China Sea, the other one in the eastern part, where, of course, you have the Pacific Ocean.
And you believe that they were primarily there to essentially map submarine routes and hiding places, is that correct?
Yes, because again, when you go back during the Second World War, that's where American submarines waited for the Japanese ships moving out from the East Indies and Luzon going to Japan. That's where basically the Americans conducted very active submarine warfare. So the Chinese are studying what what happened during the Second World War.
Right, okay. Professor Suo, so if there was marine scientific activity, is this activity legal? Do the Chinese need permissions to seek advance permission from Manila in order to do this activity?
Well, they clearly didn't think it is necessary, but I think according to the general international law rules or principles, I think it is necessary because this is a very controversial area. And but of course, everyone knows that China would not do that. But from the perspective of international community, I think this is not acceptable.
Renato, so, you know, that kind of gray zone area, it may be scientific activity, it may be military dual use.
Warfare, yeah.
Yeah, this sort of plausible deniability area. Is this what China's best working in within this space?
Of course, they will deny everything, but there's another element there. China is showing to us we can conduct scientific research inside your exclusive economic zone, but China is very protective of areas that it have control. It prevented the Philippines from conducting, for example, a survey in the Reed Bank. Basically prevented us from going back to Scarborough Shoal. So China is sending the message, I'm a great power, I could do what I want in your exclusive economic zone. You cannot do that to waters that I consider of my vital interests. So,
yes, absolutely. So on that topic, Professor Suo, sovereignty, well, let's talk about how the Philippines deploy the Teresa Magwana to chase away this Chinese research vessel. What do you make of Manila's response, you know, in terms of asserting its own sovereignty?
What Manila has done is appropriate, and also I think from Chinese side, they sort of adopted a kind of flexible and softer approach to gradually try to test how far it can go. Right, and the ultimate goal is try to legitimize or to justify their actions in the region, and so that's why China didn't, immediately use the conducted the militarization, but eventually I think, the militarization might take place in the future.
And so, but ahead of that militarization, which we'll get on to, Renato, you said the message from China to the Philippines or to the world is, we're a great power, we can do what we like. What is Manila's message back to China?
We would resist. We will not be intimidated by your power. We would not basically accept the curse of the strong do what they have to do, the weak would simply have to accept their fate. No way. This is something that the Philippines will not succumb to. And we hope also Taiwan and other smaller powers that are being bullied by China would basically adopt. We will not allow China to basically realize what you call the militia. I call it the Milian curse. The strong do what they have to do, the weak would simply have to expiate. No way should we accept that.
Okay, now let's look at the location of Scarborough Shoal, which is approximately 500 nautical miles from China's Hainan Island and around 100 nautical miles from the Luzon coast of Zambales. Located north of the Spratly Islands, Scarborough Shoal is a strategic choke point between the South China Sea and the Philippine Sea, making it a key point for controlling maritime traffic in the region. On May 5th, just 11 nautical miles southeast of Scarborough Shoal, the Philippine Navy vessel BRP Emilio Jacinto was followed at close range by a Chinese frigate while performing a routine patrol. Another Chinese frigate crossed ahead of the Philippine vessel, which the Philippines described as a high-risk maneuver. A Chinese Coast Guard ship also attempted to block the Philippine vessel's route. Professor Suo, so Renato's actually already raised the fact that it appears that they were trying to block the Philippine Navy vessel from going to Scarborough Shoal. What do you think is behind all that?
Well, again, I mean, since 1990s, China has started to make a claim that Scarborough Shoal has been part of China in the so-called long historical course. Right, so this kind of activities or semi-militarized actions is the proof that China wants to legitimize its presence in the region, and but we have to notice that this kind of unilateral actions might be considered as a little bit dangerous because it didn't consider other countries considerations and also the U.S. presence in the region. So I think China is also trying to be careful in sort of accelerating this kind of activities to the militarized level.
And Renato, we know that according to the Declaration of Conduct 2002, that basically says that parties must not change the status quo. There should be no development, therefore, on islands or features, and there should be no taking of new features. Do you think that China is trying to stop the Philippines because they are precisely doing that kind of activity? Or do you think it's more like what Professor Suo was saying, that it's simply an assertion of China's sovereignty over this feature?
Yeah, of course, it's an assertion of Chinese sovereignty, but at the same time, I'm also was taken aback by the fact that the Philippines have deployed a gray ship. Ever since, of course, what happened in Scarborough Shoal in 2012, the Philippine government has avoided sending a gray ship. I don't know if you remember when the Philippines then, at the time of the late President Benigno Aquino III, sent a gray ship. Sister ship, in fact, of the Emilio Jacinto, the Gregorio del Pilar. And of course, we know that standoff that happened. So I was really taken aback that you have a very strong assertion by the Marcos administration by sending a gray ship to the Scarborough Shoal. And sure enough, we see the Chinese approach. You will send one gray ship, I'll send an entire squadron of destroyers and of course frigates and corvette, and basically show you that I could simply overwhelm you. I have preponderant naval capabilities. But it's really amusing, the fact that the Philippines took that, I call it calculated risk of sending again a gray ship.
So you think that might have been a strategic error?
No. I think it's, again, a strong message being sent by the current administration. We will not be intimidated, no matter how preponderant your naval capabilities, no matter the fact that you have the largest Coast Guard in the world. We would challenge you.
Right. We will not make it easy for you. Professor Suo, so let's talk about why Scarborough Shoal is strategic for China. Is it its position? Let's talk about this position just outside the Luzon Strait, or the entrance to the Luzon Strait. What does it enable if it becomes a base? What does it enable China to do?
Yeah. Well, for China, Scarborough Shoal is, of utmost importance of its claim over, the so-called Zhongshan, Qundao Zhongshan, and consequently, China makes two claims about Scarborough Shoal. First, it declares that it is an island, and also it claims that Scarborough is part of China, but both claims have been denied by the 2016 PCA arbitration. But the thing is that why is it so important? Because it is composed of the one very important part of the 9-dash line. So if China eventually is able to build a base on Scarborough Shoal, it can provide China with great opportunities to show its presence in the region, and also it can provide some opportunity to further surveillance of U.S. and Philippines military operation in the region, and also it can provide some deterrence for the other countries to interfere China's patrol or supply to other build up facilities in other smaller reefs like Fiery Cross or Mischief reefs. Yeah.
Okay, Renato, so, cementing, I guess, its presence, its posture there, as well as monitoring Philippine and U.S. vessels trying to come through that strait. Tell us about the CCP's strategic triangle, which includes Fiery Cross, Woody Island, and Scarborough Shoal.
There's another notion there of the triangle. Of course, you have, in the Spratlys, you have Mischief Reef, which China occupied in 1995, which of course eventually had become what is called the Pearl Harbor of China in the Spratlys. Then further south, you have another triangle, constitute a triangle, James Shoal, the southernmost part of the 9-dash line. So that's a triangle there. Mischief Reef, Scarborough Shoal, then down to James Shoal, when of course you have the consolidation of China's claim in the South China Sea. From there, of course, China has, in a way, a sea control over the South China Sea, and also outflanking Taiwan. From those three bases, China could launch a major flanking attack against, of course, in a situation where China would decide to resolve the Taiwan question through the use of force. Just imagine, Chinese forces operating from those three facilities, not just coming from across the strait, but also coming from the southern part of Taiwan.
Given that we know about this, why do you think it is that China has not developed Scarborough Shoal yet?
Remember what happened in 2015 when China finally received its large dredger in 2000, from the Netherlands. Then you have a meeting in the White House, and I don't know if you remember, former PACOM commander Brian Harris said, "Are we going to war over rocks?" That was, of course, the reaction of President Barack Obama after Xi Jinping reneged on his promise not to militarize the South China Sea. So the Obama administration then sent the message to China. We're looking at the prospect of war. This was in 2015. Now it's already 2026. Probably it's, again, whether China would try to test President Donald Trump. We don't know, because that's the $1 million question. Would China eventually push the button when it comes to the Scarborough Shoal? Because it's also very symbolic. Chinese occupation of the Scarborough Shoal was, in a way, marked the assertion of Xi Jinping. That was one of his first major decisions. When the Scarborough Shoal incident happened in 2012, that's the time when he became president. Everyone was expecting Xi Jinping to be a liberal, a reformist. Chinese occupation of Scarborough Shoal indicated no. We're facing somebody who is, of course, assertive at the time that China is already seen as, an emergent power.
And so if it was a test of Donald Trump, Professor Suo, sometime in 2025, possibly even in 2026, how do you think that he would respond? Would he think that this is simply more grey zone warfare? Or after his joint statement with Japan's leader, they said that they would not accept any unilateral change of the status quo by force or by coercion.
Well, so far it can be considered as a kind of gray zone activity, and actually it is not very clear that the United States, what the United States would do next, but we can observe that probably in the forthcoming joint military operation exercise with the Philippines in the future, in the near future, what both countries would like to plan what to do next.
At an online conference organised by Sealight, Jonathan Malaya, Assistant Director General of the Philippine National Security Council, warned China that militarization or construction on Scarborough Shoal would cross a red line. According to Director of Sealight Ray Powell, over the past 12 months, China has doubled its presence around Scarborough Shoal, deploying dozens of ships, including Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. Sealight also released a report documenting satellite images of significant damage to Scarborough Shoal's coral reefs and marine ecology over the past decade. The report highlights, quote, the use of high-pressure water pumps to quickly suck sediment from the seabed. Let me come to you, Renato. So I think we've established that you both think that China is preparing to militarize Scarborough Shoal. How likely, though, Renato, is it that it could achieve this year or next year?
Chances are, of course, China might decide to, primarily because it's also getting very strong signal from the United States and the Philippines. Remember when Secretary Hegseth visited the Philippines, they're developing deterrence. Then just before the Balikatan exercise, you have, it's an aerial maritime cooperative activity where the United States Indo-PACOM sent 2 B-1 bombers being escorted from F-16s from Clark and Philippine Air Force FA-50s flying over Scarborough Shoal. So that's already a signal being sent by the United States, by the Trump administration. The alliance will be transformed from simply in terms of honoring its treaty commitment to the Philippines to a term used by Secretary Hegseth, deterrence. So China already see the transformation of the alliance, the development of deterrence, not only against China in the South China Sea, but more importantly in Taiwan, by the fact that, 2 B-1 bombers flying all the way from Guam, from Andrew Air Base in Guam. That's sent a strong signal to China.
Is that deterrence working, Professor Suo?
Well, I think Probably. I mean, so far, there's no like very strong military like actions that are around this area.
Sure, but it's doing undercover. I guess this is what we're trying to get to. They seem to be doing this under the radar stuff. This grey zone warfare, and it's building up. It's gradually changing the status quo and the norm in the South China Sea, as it has since 2012. And it appears to be accelerating, if we believe Sealight, the activity at Scarborough Shoal. So is that deterrence working?
Well, I think so, but China has, initiated like multiple different kind of actions, including like increasing this fishing activities in the region, and usually we cannot be too naive to believe that there is nothing about like strategic purposes.
And Renato, help us to link the two. So we started off talking about the Chinese research vessel in the Luzon Strait and the submersibles. And we have also talked about Scarborough. So link the two areas together for us in terms of the strategic picture.
Well, it's preparation, basically consolidating its claim in the South China Sea, ensuring, of course, also preparation for a Taiwan contingency, making sure that Chinese submarines would have the necessary scientific knowledge regarding the operation in the Luzon Strait. Not only submarine, I also forgot mine warfare. China could also put mines there, basically just in case chances are if you have American forces on board their amphibious supply ships going to Taiwan. So looking at all possibilities, and of course importance of Chinese forces operating from what we call the triangle as a flanking attack against Taiwan in a Taiwan scenario.
Professor Suo, so at the same time that there has been this degradation that has been recorded by organizations like Sealight, China has maintained a pristine, an excellent environmental record. It released a report in July 2024 where it claimed exactly this. And on the other hand, it's alleged that the Philippines has damaged the ecology at features like Sandy Cay and Sabina Shoal. So what is China doing?
Well, basically, this kind of accusation of Philippines with the main actor who did damage this sea ecosystem is trying to justify the fishery activities, Chinese fishery activities in the region, and to legitimize that this is it is the real legitimate actors who can do fisheries like in a clean and in a eco-friendly way. But according to other reports, some studies have pointed out that it is the findings from China is simply fabricated because some studies find that China is still trying very hard to harvest giant clams and also do dredging and constructing artificial islands, etc. Make a lot more damages to the ecosystem in the region. And also, according to a Center for Strategic and International Studies report, it reveals that China's construction projects buried over 1,861 hectares of coral reefs in the South China Sea. So these are some other evidence that shows that China is indeed the actor who damage this ecosystem in the region.
Renato, is China trying to distract attention from its own damage as laid out by Professor?
Oh, of course. This is what they call gaslighting, a term that I learned from my son. Basically tried to blame the other one for the damages you have, and it's a classic case of gaslighting in international relations.
And so we know that the Philippine government plans to file an international lawsuit against China, perhaps a sort of a second one to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Do we know how that is progressing?
Again, that remains to be seen, because what happened, of course, in 2013 is different from what's happening right now. Two factors there you have to look at. Number one, of course, when China occupied Scarborough Shoal in 2012, it really embarrassed, it really humiliated the late President Benigno Aquino. So he was basically asking his cabinet members, what can we do to basically get back at China? So somebody advised in the cabinet, retired Justice Antonio Carpio, why not file a case against China? And of course, you also have the very active participation of the late Foreign Secretary at the time, Albert Del Rosario, who was really dead set. Despite, in fact, you have voices inside the Department of Foreign Affairs who were very reluctant to file a case against China. Even the cabinet then was divided. So you have two personalities there, the late President Benigno Aquino III, and of course the late Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Albert Del Rosario, who pushed for that. I don't see this in the case right now. China's destroying the shoal, so what's new? And of course, the other factor there is, do we have somebody in the Department of Foreign Affairs who are, of course, forceful enough to convince President Marcos Jr. and, of course, the cabinet to file a case against China? Because actually, the filing of that case was very expensive. It took some time before the Philippines was able finally to compensate the American lawyers. So again, a number of factors will have to be taken into account.
Okay, well, we've run out of time. We'll have to end the show there. Thank you so much, Su Yanbing and Renato Cruz de Castro, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.